My younger sister got called in by the school because of her early relationship, but little did I know that her homeroom teacher is actually my high school crush. Is early dating a family tradition in your house? I blurted out without thinking, and the whole office fell into silence. Me? No, teacher, please let me explain. If I had known I would run into Sue today, I definitely wouldn't have rushed to the school with a scruffy beard. The most awkward part isn't running into an ex, but running into an ex when her beauty is even more captivating than before, while I haven't even washed my face. Are you Shirley's parent? Sue's crisp voice echoed. I'm her homeroom teacher, Sue. Although we broke up several years ago, I shouldn't be unrecognizable, right? Sue and I were together during our senior year. She was a top student, and I was a slacker. That year, she managed to boost my grades significantly, and in the end, we both got into universities in the same city. However, the two schools were in different parts of the city, requiring 3 subway transfers and a 3-hour round trip. Plus, after she entered university, she became busy with experiments and competitions with her teachers, so we spent even less time together. We were at that age of stubbornness, where breaking up was said and done with ease. In the following years, although we were in the same city, we never saw each other again. Unexpectedly, our reunion happened under these circumstances. My sister's early dating situation made me, as her guardian, feel inferior in front of the teacher. I immediately adopted a polite and respectful attitude. Hello, Teacher Sue, I'm Tim, Shirley's brother. From childhood to adulthood, I've entered many offices with my playful and mischievous nature, but this is the first time I've felt so awkward. Thinking about this, I realize how heavy it must be on my sister's heart. If it weren't for her, would I have fallen to this point? Our parents are away on a business trip, or else it wouldn't have been me facing this embarrassment. The other parents also arrived, leaving me in a one-on-two situation, apologizing profusely. Thankfully, they were understanding. Sue handed over the report cards for both children. Now that they're in their senior year, with only a few months left until the college entrance exams, their mindset is crucial. I've already talked to them about it, and they will focus on studying without affecting their grades. I invited you here today to ensure that parents can cooperate well and provide proper guidance. Holding the report cards, I muttered quietly, I must say, she's been staying up late every night doing exercises like she's been injected with chicken blood. She's really showing the same spirit I had back then. Sue paused briefly, finally looking up at me. Is early dating a family tradition in your house? Why does that sound so unpleasant? Meeting her cold, ink-black eyes, my mind went blank, and I instinctively replied, no, it's just that the teachers provide excellent guidance. Silence. The entire office felt frozen, and the other parents and teachers stared at me as if they had seen a ghost. Then it finally dawned on me what I had said. Ah. Teacher Sue, I didn't mean it like that, please don't misunderstand. Just at that moment, one of the other parents received a phone call and left first. Now, only Sue and I remained, and the atmosphere became even more awkward. So, I prepared to leave as well. Sue stood up to see me off. Every step felt agonizing. When we reached the door, just as I thought I was finally free, Sue suddenly spoke in a soft voice. I didn't teach her to actively pursue someone. The me who had pursued Sue back then, in high school, Sue was the object of countless secret crushes, but I was different. I openly loved her. The whole world knew how much I liked her, and the whole world knew how difficult she was to pursue. So, in the end, when we got together, it shocked countless people. The way she is now reminds me of when I confessed to her for the first time, and she remained indifferent. A nameless anger surged within me. With a hot-headed mind, I blurted out, Teacher Sue, to be honest, I did pursue you back then, but I was also the one who broke up with you. As soon as the words left my mouth, I regretted it. She's not my girlfriend anymore. She's my sister's homeroom teacher. I've really messed up by saying such disrespectful things. Luckily, my useless sister finally showed up just in time to save me from this mess. Brother? She said, waiting outside the office. I quickly said, Miss Sue, you don't need to accompany me. I'll go talk to Shirley for a moment and then leave. My friend is waiting for me at the school gate. After speaking, I didn't even dare to look at her face and hurriedly pulled Shirley into the hallway. She looked at me strangely and asked, Brother, why are you so nervous? I snapped back, who's nervous? Shirley sighed, I've known you for 17 years. There's nothing about you that I don't know. She turned around and glanced back, saying, Our homeroom teacher can't be that scary, right? Surely, you were the one who had an early relationship. You don't feel guilty and yet you're arguing with me? Shirley replied, but brother, didn't you also have an early relationship back then? I didn't see you feeling guilty either. I remained expressionless and said, so now it's karma. Your homeroom teacher is the person I had an early relationship with. Shirley? She looked shocked and then put on a mask of pain. I'm doomed. Brother, you're just enjoying yourself without caring about your sister's life. Weren't you scared when your early relationship was exposed? Besides, how could I have known that Sue would become my sister's homeroom teacher? As soon as we left the school gate, I got into a car parked by the roadside. My friend Lou glanced at me and asked, hey, did the homeroom teacher scold you? Since we happened to have a day off today, the two of us planned to go out for hot pot together. After we finished eating, he drove me to school. I collapsed weakly in the passenger seat, feeling hopeless. No, but it's 1,000 times worse than that. Her homeroom teacher is Sue. Lou went, oh, and 3 seconds later, he screamed, no way? I covered my ears and was pulled away by this man again. Sue? Sue? The one you had an early relationship with in high school? I reluctantly replied, yeah. Lou covered his mouth and said, it's over, it's over. Shirley is in trouble. Her brother dumped her homeroom teacher. How is she going to live her life from now on? I said, doesn't anyone think that I'm also in a miserable situation? You're miserable as hell. Lou glared at me, you managed to get the unattainable beauty, and then you dumped her. Who could be happier than you? Well, even though I didn't want to hear those words, Sue's face, her figure, indeed lived up to such evaluations. It's been so many years, let's not talk about it. Seeing that I was really down, Lou resisted the urge to gossip and changed the subject. By the way, Larry and Wendy are getting married this Saturday. Are you going? These two are our high school classmates, and more importantly, Wendy has a good relationship with Sue, so she'll probably invite her too. Should I tell them that you're not going? Suddenly, an inexplicable force surged through my chest. I can't seem to get Sue's calm and indifferent demeanor out of my mind. We're all adults now, what's the point of dwelling on the past? Besides, she's my sister's homeroom teacher now. I can't keep avoiding her forever, right? Let's go. On Saturday, I changed into a suit, shaved my beard, and headed to the wedding venue. The bride and groom were standing at the entrance, welcoming guests. I handed over the red envelope and congratulated them with a smile. Congratulations on your wedding. The groom glanced behind me in surprise and asked, Tim, is Sue with you? Confused, I turned around and noticed that Sue was just a few steps behind me, walking towards us. She was wearing a simple white dress today. Some people effortlessly become the center of attention, and Sue is one of those people. It seemed like she heard the conversation, looked up, and our eyes met for a second. I immediately turned around, awkwardly explaining, no. The groom looked puzzled and was about to ask more questions when the bride gently pulled him and smiled as she approached Sue. Shirley. Welcome. I hurriedly walked inside and quickly spotted Lou, who had arrived early, waving at me. I rushed over, thinking I could finally escape the situation. However, when I saw the high school classmates sign on the table, my heart sank instantly. I looked around again, and indeed, all the familiar faces were there. I remained silent. Then, Sue arrived. There were only 2 seats left at the table, one on my left and one opposite me. Class president, sit here. One of the girls who was on good terms with him stood up and greeted Sue. They must have already known what happened at the entrance. If anyone had eyes, they could probably tell that we had broken up. I heard her footsteps approaching as I stared at the porcelain white teacup, growing increasingly nervous for some reason. Then, she passed by me from behind and took a seat across from me. For a moment, the table fell silent. Fortunately, the girl who greeted Sue was good at livening up the atmosphere, and the conversation quickly became lively again. I heard the class president is now a teacher at Yizhong High School. That's a prestigious school, quite difficult to get into. Isn't the class president still the class president? Impressive people are impressive wherever they go, haha. Wow, who would have thought that Larry and Wendy would be the first couple from our class to get married? I always thought it would be. The person speaking suddenly realized their mistake and immediately stopped talking. Several pairs of eyes kept glancing at Sue and me. When Sue and I were together, it was a passionate and well-known relationship throughout the school. No one could have predicted that we would end up like this. I subconsciously looked at her, and the woman opposite me lowered her gaze, pouring tea. The smooth and perfect line from her brow to the bridge of her nose seemed unaffected by the surrounding discussions. I felt a bit suffocated and used the excuse of going to the restroom. Lou messaged me, to be honest, now that you've broken up with a woman of this caliber, don't you regret it? Why not try to win her back? Faint whispers could be heard outside the cubicle. I can't believe Sue and Tim broke up. Do you remember how much effort Tim put into pursuing her? So what? Sue can have anyone she wants. They were never meant to be together. Exactly, and I don't think Sue really liked him that much. She probably only agreed to be with him because she couldn't resist his persistent pursuit, and then she dumped him. It turns out that adults really enjoy bringing up the past. Although I was the one who broke up with Sue, they were right about everything else they said. I typed a response to Lou, boasting a bit. Let's get this straight, I was the one who didn't want her first. If she wants to pursue me, she has to do the chasing. Lou replied, ambitious, inspiring, daydreaming in broad daylight. After waiting for those people to finish chatting, I leisurely came out of the partition. When I returned to the table, a few people had already had some drinks and were engrossed in conversation. I sat down, ready to continue eating, when Lou pinched me under the table. Why did you block me? I glanced at him. Don't you have any tact? Hey, Tim. Someone called out to me. I looked up and saw Chris, one of the 3 guys who had been talking about me in the restroom earlier. We had a little unpleasantness in high school, and if it weren't for attending this wedding, we wouldn't be sitting at the same table. He used to have a crush on Sue, and after finding out that Sue and I were together, he tried to trip me up a few times, both openly and discreetly. He smiled and asked, I hope you don't mind me asking, but are you single now? The table fell silent. He had already asked the question, so why bother with this insincere remark? He added, I have a few friends who are still single, would you like me to introduce them to you? I smiled and replied, thank you, but it's not necessary. I have high standards. The table fell even quieter. The smile on his face almost faltered, but Sue, this living proof, was sitting right here, and he couldn't refute that. After a few seconds, his eyes shifted. I see, then in all these years, you haven't been in a relationship at all? What does he mean? Can't find anyone better than Sue? Or as he said before, did this caliber of woman only choose me because Sue had poor judgment? It's been all right. I've had 2 or 3 relationships, I said. One was a rash decision after breaking up with Sue. I agreed to a junior's pursuit at the same school, but on the 3rd day, she wanted to hold my hand, which scared me, so we broke up. The other one was after graduation when my aunt set me up on a blind date. This time, it didn't even last 3 days. During the second meal, she kept talking about quitting her job to become a full-time mother, so I blocked her on the spot. From a certain perspective, saying I've had 2 or 3 relationships isn't exactly a lie. At that moment, everyone's reactions were quite amusing. Breaking the silence, I smiled and said, you have to try different people to know if they're the right one. Sue heard my words and quietly glanced at me. Fed up with this strange atmosphere, I decided to take the initiative. Teacher Sue, don't you think so? Chris was about to burst. Why are you calling class monitor Sue, Teacher Sue? Oh, I forgot to mention, Sue is my sister's homeroom teacher. We just met a few days ago. Listen to that. What a qualified ex. What it means to reconcile with one's past youth. What it means I don't know. Sue placed her teacup down with her slender, jade-like fingers, her voice cool and composed. I've only been in 1 relationship. The air became stagnant. For a moment, I felt like Sue was intentionally betraying me, making me the scum that everyone despised. But at the same time, my heart started racing uncontrollably. How many years had it been since we broke up? With Sue's qualities, if she wanted to, she could have dated as many boyfriends as she pleased. Yet she actually said she had only been in 1 relationship. As I was lost in my thoughts, the bride and groom came to toast, diverting the topic. As everyone started leaving, I saw Chris approaching Sue. Class monitor, my nephew is about to take the high school entrance exam. He wants to apply to the top high school. Would it be convenient to exchange WeChat contacts? He might need your guidance in the future. What a contrast from when they were discussing me in the restroom. What kind of scheme was he playing? Did he really think no one could see through it? I quickened my pace, not wanting to hear Sue's response. However, her cold voice still reached my ears clearly. I'm currently teaching the third-year students and not responsible for the high school entrance exam matters. If you have any questions, you can call our school's administration office for consultation." Chris felt embarrassed and nodded awkwardly. "Oh, okay. Should I say it or not? Class monitor is still quite popular, huh? But she's becoming more skilled at rejecting people." Lou clicked his tongue. "You walked away so quickly, didn't you see how unhappy Chris looked?" I looked for my car while casually saying, "That's normal. If she didn't know how to reject people, her WeChat list would be full by now." Back then, I left breakfast on her desk for an entire week just to get her contact information. I was so broke at the time that I went hungry for that whole week. I really don't know where I found such confidence and persistence, relentlessly pursuing her. "True. Haven't you heard people say she's only been in one relationship all these years?" Lou said, giving me a thumbs up and admiringly saying, "Comrade Tim, you can do it, really. I used to think you were just bragging when you said you'd make her chase you, but now I think it's actually possible." "The car is here." I pressed the key and as I walked, I casually said, "I'm not that easy to chase after." Suddenly, I felt something was off. I stopped, slowly turned my head, and looked at the car next to me. The window was half lowered, revealing a delicate face of a woman. She seemed to have just finished a call and turned her head upon hearing the noise. "Sue." I practically dropped dead on the spot. She raised her eyelids slightly and calmly spoke, "I want to chase after you?" I played dead again. No, I really didn't mean that, don't misunderstand. I meant to say that I'm actually easy to chase after." "No, that's not right. I meant to say that it's not that difficult for you to chase after me." "No, that's not it either." Facing the woman's consistently calm gaze, all I wanted to do was scratch the wall in despair. Just then, Lou came over. He didn't hear much, but seeing Sue there, he was also stunned. I desperately gestured to him with my eyes, "Take me away quickly." Lou's gaze shifted between me and Sue, and he suddenly realized, quickly speaking up, "Right, I suddenly remembered that there's something at work I need to attend to. I'll leave first." "Tim, your car is broken, right? Why not let class monitor give you a ride back?" "Lou, you're dead to me." Unfortunately, Lou completely missed the spirit I was trying to convey and just ran off after speaking. I took a deep breath, gritted my teeth, and opened the car door directly. Sue asked softly, "Wasn't the car broken?" I replied. I reluctantly pretended to touch the steering wheel. "It seems to be working again." Sue asked, "Are you sure?" "Of course, I'm sure. I just had it serviced a few days ago. Otherwise, I wouldn't have let Lou drive me to school that day." Yeah, it can drive," I said, fastening my seatbelt, ready to perform a disappearing act. And then, Sue got out of the car, stood outside the door, and tapped on the window with her finger. "Could you do me a favor and give me a ride? My car broke down." I felt like Sue was playing a trick on me. Just as I was about to refuse, I heard her say, "The insurance company's representative is here. The car really did break down." Was she contacting the insurance company's representative just now? It didn't seem appropriate to refuse at this point, considering our current relationship and the amount of interaction we've had. After Sue finished discussing with those people and received another phone call, she frowned. "Understood, we'll go right away." When she approached, I opened my mouth, intending to let her take a taxi or find someone else to help, but she said, "It takes about half an hour to get to San Hospital from here. We might have to hurry?" I was confused. San Hospital? Why are we going there? Sue looked at me and said, "Shirley suddenly had a severe stomachache during class. The school doctor said it might be acute appendicitis, and she has been taken to San Hospital." My heart sank suddenly. When we arrived at the hospital, Shirley had already been taken into the operating room. The middle-aged woman who brought her here was the school doctor, and the other young man seemed to be her teacher. Seeing Sue and me coming together, both of them looked puzzled. The male teacher looked at me for a moment and asked softly, "Sue, who is this?" "This is Shirley's brother." Sue explained briefly, without elaborating on why I was here with her. "How is Shirley?" she asked. He explained, "Shirley had a severe stomachache during math class. Dr. Wang said the situation was urgent, so we immediately brought her here. She has been in there for a while, and she should be coming out soon." Sue nodded, probably sensing how anxious I was, and lowered her voice. "Sit there and rest for a while." I shook my head, refusing to move. I'll stay here with her. Sue paused, her voice lowered a few notches, sounding unexpectedly reassuring. Don't worry. Acute appendicitis is a minor surgery. Everything will be fine. As soon as she said that, both of their faces showed surprise, especially the male teacher. His gaze lingered on me for a few seconds. I didn't pay them any mind. My mind was solely focused on Shirley in the operating room. My heart felt like it was being roasted over a fire. Somewhere along the way, I got too anxious. On such a cold day, I was sweating profusely. At that moment, as a gust of wind blew down the hospital corridor, I couldn't help but shiver. And at that moment, my arm felt heavier, and a familiar scent came from beside me. I turned my head and met Sue's gaze. She said, "Your parents are still out of town, and if you get sick too, there will be no one to take care of her." I instantly woke up and whispered, "Thank you." An hour later, Shirley's surgery was successfully completed and she was taken to the ward. I went to complete her admission procedures, and then called my parents to reassure them that Shirley just needed a few days of rest and there was nothing major to worry about. After everything was settled, I returned to the ward and saw Sue talking to Shirley by the bedside. During this time, focus on recovering. Don't worry about your studies. I will send you the notes and assignments. Every minute and every second of senior year is precious. As I watched this scene, I suddenly felt a bit dazed. The way she was, it really reminded me of how she used to push me to study. But there was also something different. She was clearly much gentler and more tolerant towards Shirley. When I was busy playing games and didn't want to study, I had to pester Sue for a long time before she would hold my hand. Thinking about this, I felt a bit resentful. After Sue finished speaking, she stood up and said, "Rest well." She tactfully left the ward for the two of us siblings. But my sister was not tactful at all. As soon as Sue left, she looked at me with a sly expression and started questioning, "Tell me, how did you end up here with our homeroom teacher?" With a straight face, I replied, "Shirley, have you forgotten that I am your biological brother?" Shirley had just had surgery and her face was still a bit pale, but it didn't affect her fighting spirit at all. She said, "I haven't forgotten, and I haven't forgotten that you had an early relationship and dumped the other person." Even after having her appendix removed, she still had the energy to nag like this. It seems like there really isn't much going on. "Shirley, you better be more polite to your dear brother, otherwise you might have a harder time during this time in the hospital bed," I said, getting up to leave. "Hey, brother," Shirley called out to me. I turned around and asked, "What?" Shirley suddenly coughed awkwardly, revealing a fawning smile. "Brother, could you do me a favor?" "What?" "When you go to school to pick up my books, can you tell Sammy that I'm fine and will recover soon?" Sammy is the guy she likes. I've seen his picture in Shirley's backpack. I was speechless. "Why do you have so many things going on?" Shirley confidently replied, "I'm just afraid he'll worry." I was taken aback. "All right, got it. Thank you, brother," Shirley said, then with a worried expression added, "But brother, it's probably not possible for you and our homeroom teacher, right?" I gave her a death stare. Shirley fell silent for a moment, then said, "After all, so many people like her, just in our school alone. But if you want to get back together with her, that's fine, but you have to promise that you won't break up before my college entrance exams." I calmly said, "Shirley, consider yourself lucky that you went into the operating room today and saved yourself a dog's life by losing your appendix. Today has been truly eventful." I walked out of the ward, planning to get some fresh air, otherwise I'll end up with high blood pressure from this colorful life. As I reached the corner of the stairs, it was quite dark. I let out a long breath and rubbed my slightly tired eyes. Then, I heard footsteps approaching, and I realized that Sue was also here. When she noticed my presence, she looked over at me. I was about to speak and ask her when it would be a good time for me to go to school and help Shirley pack her things, but she suddenly walked towards me. "Timmy," she whispered my name. It was the first time we've spoken since we reunited. She was so close to me that I could feel her breath as she spoke. In that moment, I had a fleeting sense of déjà vu, as if we were back to the time when we were together and she would call me like that. In the beginning, she always called me Tim in a proper manner. I didn't like it, so I would deliberately approach her and earnestly brainwash her, saying, "Sue, you are mine, and I am yours. We are destined to be together, it's fate, understand?" I was the one who liked her first, and I pursued her with great effort, so most of the time, she was the one taking the initiative. But this was one of those rare moments when I had the upper hand, and of course, I wouldn't miss the opportunity. I leaned on my arm and looked at her, unable to help but smile. "Sue, you're so obedient." Sue didn't say anything again, remaining silent for a while, before finally handing me a stack of papers. "Write these, and I'll check them when you're done." Well, although memories tend to beautify things, clearly not every frame deserves to be filtered. The silence seemed to breed ambiguity. I knew we were too close, but I didn't step back, and neither did she. Our breaths intertwined. It was a distance where a touch was just a lift of the hand away. "Teacher Sue?" Suddenly, a male voice came from outside. "Are you there? We should go. The research meeting is about to start." The delicate atmosphere was shattered, and I snapped back to reality. I quickly took off my jacket and handed it over. "Teacher Sue, thank you." The voices outside quieted abruptly. Sue paused, looking into my eyes. But she didn't say anything, just froze for a second, before seemingly coming back to her senses and quickly diverting her gaze. I remembered the question I wanted to ask earlier. "So, should I go to school on Monday to help Shirley pack her things and bring them back?" Sue made a sound of agreement without turning back. Without thinking, I followed her gaze, only to realize that the male teacher hadn't left either. He was waiting for Sue? I didn't know what he said, but Sue nodded, and he smiled. That's when I noticed, he was quite handsome, with a sunny and handsome look. Lou was right, with a woman like Sue, many men would scramble to pursue her. I slapped my face. "Tim, wake up. You're just a brief detour in her youthful ignorance. Don't delude yourself into thinking that she can't forget about you because of a casual remark." Dad and Mom rushed back from out of town overnight, and after enduring 2 days, I can finally go home and take a temporary rest. But lying in bed, I still can't sleep and couldn't help but call Lou. "Lou, I can't sleep." Lou's voice was elusive and resentful. "Tim, did you forget that tomorrow is Monday? Do you know how precious sleep is for us corporate slaves?" I pretended not to hear the second half of the sentence. "Yeah. Tomorrow is Monday, and I still have to go to school to get books for Shirley." Lou replied, "And then?" I said, "I guess her homeroom teacher will take me there since I haven't been to her class before and don't know where she sits." "Do you think it would be too much trouble for her?" Lou fell silent for a moment, then said, "Just say you want to see a woman, don't waste my time." I tried to refute. "Who said I wanted to see Sue?" Lou questioned, "Did I mention Sue's name?" Men at night are indeed prone to forgetfulness. "Okay, go to sleep," I said, about to hang up the phone. But Lou objected. "Hey, don't just say half of it. To be honest, your sister is sick this time, and she has been doing her best. Plus, that face, those long legs, aren't you moved?" I remained silent. Lou became more enthusiastic. "Let me tell you, fate is rare, and both of you are single now, so go after her." I sighed. "Lou, it's impossible between us." Lou was puzzled. "Why?" I touched my left knee, where there was a 3-centimeter scar. "Didn't I ever tell you why Sue and I broke up?" Lou responded with a grunt. "I always wanted to ask, but you didn't want to tell me, so I stopped asking. I just felt that if you liked her so much and still decided to break up, there must be a reason." I turned over and looked at the moonlight flowing quietly along the windowsill, calmly saying, "In my freshman year, our club organized a mountain climbing activity, and I accidentally fell from the slope, leaving several wounds on my body." Lou was instantly shocked. "What? How come you never mentioned it before?" "Actually, it didn't hurt my bones, it wasn't a big deal, but I told Sue about it at the time. I know she was busy, but she didn't reply to my messages all day. I called her more than 10 times, but she didn't answer. I waited until 4 o'clock in the morning the next day before receiving her WeChat message. She told me to take good care of my wounds and that she was busy, so she would come later." Silence filled the other end of the phone. In fact, many years have passed since then, and I can hardly remember those details anymore. Even now, I can speak about them in such a calm tone. "But, Lou, I've heard him say too many times that she's busy. When other people go out on dates with their girlfriends, she's busy. When I was lying in the hospital after getting injured, she was still busy. How can she be so busy that she can't even love me a little?" This relationship was something I pursued from the beginning, and Sue was always unbeatable. I couldn't control her love for me. I could only choose to continue or give up. I really liked her, but I also get tired. My sister got sick this time, just had surgery, and she kept asking me to tell the guy she likes that he's okay, afraid he'll worry. But it's not the same with Sue. At that time, I sat alone in the hospital holding my phone for a whole day and night. It's like what those people say, she just didn't like me that much, so when I received her message, I broke up with her and immediately blocked and deleted her. I was dispensable. I chose to give up. On Monday, I took a day off specifically to go to school. When I found class 3 of grade 12, Sue had just finished their morning meeting. I knocked on the door and said, "Hello, Teacher Sue, I'm here to pick up Shirley's things." All the students in the class looked at me. Sue nodded and said, "Her seat is the last one in the second row." I walked over and realized that Sammy was sitting in front of her. The curious and shy boy looked at me. While grabbing the books, I smiled at him. Another girl next to him asked, "Brother, is Shirley feeling better now?" I praised her in my heart and winked at Sammy, saying, "Don't worry, her surgery went smoothly, and she'll be back at school soon." Sammy breathed a sigh of relief, and his ears turned slightly red. I packed up Shirley's things just as the bell rang. Sue and I walked out together, and I saw the male teacher I had met at the hospital earlier. Oh right, he is Shirley's math teacher, so this class must be his. When he saw me, he paused, nodded, and smiled at Sue, saying, "Teacher Sue, a few teachers, including me, have found a problem with a question from the last joint exam. Do you have time to take a look?" Sue nodded and said, "Sure." I felt a bit inexplicably unhappy. Sue took a couple of steps forward, noticed that I wasn't following, and turned back to look at me, asking, "What's wrong?" I held back and couldn't help but say, "It's nothing. I just think Teacher Sue is amazing. Even though you teach physics, the math teachers still have to consult you." Sue casually replied, "It's not a big deal. After teaching for a long time, it's hard not to remember." I, who had been taught the same math problem by Sue 13 times until I understood it, felt a bit embarrassed. I felt a bit resentful, and the excitement I had when I came here completely vanished. I shouldn't have come. Yeah, teaching a student like me, you must not be as good as teaching smart students. As soon as I finished speaking, Sue looked at me quietly without saying a word. My heart skipped a beat. Oh. Did my words sound jealous to her? Sue nodded and said, "Indeed, Shirley is much easier to teach than you." Me, for a moment, I didn't know if she was complimenting me for not forgetting my past relationship or calling me a fool. So I chose to run. "Well, if there's nothing else, Teacher Sue, I'll go now." "Wait." Sue handed me her phone and said, "Add me on WeChat." My heart uncontrollably skipped a beat. Then she added, "I summarized the knowledge points from these past few days and sent the papers to you. Take a look and show them to Shirley." Oh, seniors in high school don't have phones. I scanned the QR code expressionlessly, clicked on Add. "Thank you, Teacher Sue, for taking care of our child." Sue agreed, and a message appeared on the screen. "I have accepted your friend verification request. Now we can start chatting." Sue put away her phone and said, "It's my pleasure." I don't know when Sue changed her phone number and WeChat. After all, we haven't been in contact for so many years, and when we broke up, I never thought there would be a day when we would add each other again. Her moments on social media doesn't have much content, just like her, giving off a cold and distant feeling. I scrolled through it for a while until Shirley reluctantly called out to me, "Brother, can I see the knowledge points that Teacher Sue sent me now?" I snorted and handed her the phone. My mom, who was peeling a banana next to me, couldn't help but say, "Ah, this homeroom teacher is really special, Timmy. You should treat her to a meal in return." Me, I was infatuated back then, probably because I was basking in the glow of Sue being a top student. The teacher's attitudes weren't particularly intense, and after talking to both of us separately, they just accepted it. It's not like Shirley, who got caught and had to have a parent-teacher meeting. "So my parents don't know that person is Sue." Let's forget it. Teachers don't accept gifts nowadays. My mom took back the banana she was about to hand me. How can this be considered a gift? The teacher really helped us a lot. If it wasn't for her, Shirley's grades would definitely decline. Shirley couldn't hold back and said, "That's right, and what about my brother?" If it wasn't for our homeroom teacher, with my brother's grades back then, would he have achieved that score in the college entrance exam? Well said. Let's not mention it again next time. My parents were stunned, and Shirley knew she made a mistake, silently lowered her head and continued writing her exam paper. I couldn't take it anymore and could only give a simple explanation. After listening, my mom suddenly asked, "Is that girl still single?" My mom got excited. "I've met that girl at the parent-teacher meeting. She's beautiful and has a good temperament. She's a perfect match for our Timmy. This job is good, and her personality is good too. She's in high demand. Timmy, if she's still single, you can spend more time together and see how it goes. Those blind dates outside can't compare to someone who knows everything about you." I kept dragging it on, trying to brush this matter aside, but my mom would bring it up every few days. A week later, Shirley returned to school. And my chat history with Sue remained at the last set of physics problems she sent. It was all Shirley asking her questions, and she occasionally replied with voice messages. I secretly scrolled from top to bottom, listening to all those voice messages, and afterwards, I felt like I was being too nervous. I hurriedly clicked on the last PDF file, forcibly shifting my attention. 3 minutes later, I backed out, unable to help but murmur, "This question is too difficult." After saying that, I realized something was wrong. I had a moment of absent-mindedness and accidentally pressed the voice message button. I swear, I have never in my life retracted a 3-second voice message with such speed. Then, a message came in from the other side. "What part don't you understand? Let me die." I've thought of 10,000 ways to initiate a conversation with Sue, but I never expected this one. I've decided to take the plunge and send a big cat emoji. "Teacher Sue, my whole family is extremely grateful for taking care of Shirley. I was wondering when you're free, can I treat you to a meal?" Sue didn't ask me why I dodged the previous question and quickly replied, "Today, okay?" The homeroom teacher of the third-year class has so much free time, but since she said so, I can only brace myself and agree. "All right. What do you want to eat? Coconut chicken or Japanese cuisine?" "Sue, hot pot." I was a little surprised. Sue actually has a very plain taste, while I love spicy food, but I didn't want to make assumptions, so I simply replied, "Okay. Let's meet at 7 p.m. The weather is gradually getting warmer, but the atmosphere in the hot pot restaurant is still lively. Except for our table. After ordering, silence fell. I never thought I would be sitting at a table, having a meal alone with Sue. Playing with my phone would be impolite, and there's nothing to talk about. Thankfully, the waiter was enthusiastic. "We have a promotion in our restaurant. If the two of you can complete it, you can win a small gift. Guessing idioms?" "I can do that." I eagerly agreed, and then the waiter brought a plate of cabbage. "Me? What is this?" The waiter encouraged, "Madam can also take a guess." Sue raised her eyes slightly and took a glance. "Growing old together?" "Waiter, correct. This is our complimentary dish, along with our little toy. I hope the two of you can live a harmonious life, growing old together. There's probably nothing more awkward than receiving blessings like this as a couple who have already broken up." I struggled to explain, "Actually, we're not." "Thank you." Sue interrupted me and handed me the little toy. I instinctively took it, saying, "I'm already so grown up, I don't play with these anymore." Sue reached out her hand again, saying, "Then give it to me." I pocketed it and said, "Give it to Shirley." Sue's lips seemed to curve, and only then did I realize how childish my behavior was. The waiter walked away with an auntie-like smile. Then I heard someone calling my name. "Tim?" "Huh?" I instinctively looked up and found an unfamiliar girl standing in front of me, looking at me with surprise. "It's been years, and you've become even more handsome." I was a bit confused. "Who are you?" The girl's smile froze. Sue's cold and calm voice came, "Your ex?" Sometimes I feel like this world is quite magical. I don't understand how I ended up seeing my senior from university, whom I only dated for 3 days, in a hot pot restaurant. Even more so, I can't recognize her face anymore, but it seems like Sue knows her well. I hesitated for a second and said, "I'm sorry, my memory isn't good." The girl's expression turned even worse, and she hurriedly excused herself. I couldn't help but look at Sue, her expression indifferent, revealing no emotions, but for some reason, I felt guilty. I really don't remember her." Sue nodded and asked, "Don't remember which ex?" "Me." This woman doesn't talk much, but why does she become more and more sarcastic? I also got a little angry. Looking at Sue like this, I could only mutter softly, "I just don't remember." "Okay." Sue picked up a slice of fatty beef roll and then put it in her own bowl. "Me? Why are you being so petty?" Sue seemed to not hear me. I resentfully picked up an even bigger piece of fatty beef and muttered under my breath, "You're talking about others? What did I say?" Sue paused, looked up, and said, "Which role do you want to do? I can explain it to you anytime." I shivered. "Teacher Sue, this isn't right." After saying that, the two of us fell silent for a moment. When she used to guide me and make me write essays, she often said this: I didn't want to do it, so I always acted stubborn. Acting stubborn usually ended up with holding hands, and occasionally, we even hugged if I did well. In this situation, the person involved regrets it very much. I could only bring up Shirley again. Talking about students, we could always talk about something. Halfway through, I received a message from Lou. "Bro, wanna go for barbecue?" I sent him a picture. "Lou, so love can disappear, right?" But then he noticed something. "Wait, who is sitting across from you?" I could only tell him the truth. My parents asked me to treat her to a meal to thank her for taking care of Shirley during this time. "Lou, you're really something." "Me? Lou, you're incredibly clueless." "Lou, let me see how much you've lost in your love-struck mind." "Me? Lou, how did this woman treat you back then? Have you completely forgotten? You even said it was impossible between you two before." "Put down your chopsticks and leave." "Me? Ah Jung, is it possible that she has always liked me as well?" Then I realized that this guy put me on the blacklist. I put down my phone and gathered the courage to look at Sue. "Sue, why do you know that person from earlier?" She raised her eyes slightly and looked over. I heard the sound of my accelerating heartbeat. Even I didn't know what kind of answer I was waiting for in this moment. "Sue and I aren't from the same university, although we often visit each other's schools. I'm sure she wouldn't have had a chance to meet that person." "There's only one answer." "Is this important?" Sue asked in return. I froze. "Tim." Her eyes darkened slightly, her lips lightly pursed, warm light falling on her delicate face, faintly overlapping with her youthful self. "What's important is that I'm jealous." I rushed to Lou's house overnight. Lou looked at me with a hopeless expression. "So, just because this woman turns her head, you forgive her?" I collapsed on the bed in a big X shape. "I don't know either. I know we can't go back to the past, those things happened and that's that. But, she's Sue." "It's Sue, whom Tim has liked since he was 16. Actually, the time we spent apart is much longer than the time we were together. I thought time could smooth everything out, but now I realize that the weight of those times is completely different. The years we were apart, in the instant she uttered those words, seemed to compress into light and repeating fragments. Only those old times with her are vivid and passionate. Actually, after we broke up, when I looked back on the time we were together, I always felt like she also liked me. She knew that I starved for a week because I wanted to bring her breakfast, so she always helped me with breakfast. When I couldn't learn and thought I was stupid, she never got impatient. "Chris, do you remember? Back then, when we were playing basketball and he intentionally pushed me, I didn't care at all. But Sue still got angry." It was the first time I saw her with such a cold expression. Later, even when Chris saw me, he would go around, "Not just these." At that time, my mind and eyes were full of Sue. Even a slight neglect from her would be magnified countless times by me. But after we separated, as I recall, I inexplicably remember many overlooked details. Lou pondered for a long time and clicked his tongue. "What kind of luck does this woman have to meet you? How about this? Let her chase you, have more contact with her, and it would be best to have an open and honest conversation, then you can decide whether to continue being together." I patted his shoulder. "Understood, dreams are plentiful, reality is harsh. You can't expect a class teacher who's dealing with senior year students to give you too much time and attention." After leaving that infinitely ambiguous statement that day, unfortunately, Teacher Sue didn't launch an intense pursuit towards me. Instead, she started sending Shirley's grades separately to my parents, and then sent them to me again. Occasionally, she would talk about a certain point of knowledge, and the me from back then and Shirley now would make the same mistakes, the difference being that Shirley would correct them in one go, while I needed many times. I argued, and finally, my arguments became ineffective, and I became angry. "Teacher Sue, do all the good students have such good memory?" Sue has been busy with assessments recently, and when she replied to my message, it was already evening. "I remember everything related to you." Time flew by and it was already March. Shirley and the others were going to have their coming-of-age ceremony. Sue personally sent me an invitation. I pretended to hesitate and said, "My parents will be going, So I don't need to, right? Sue immediately called me. I instantly jumped out of bed, feeling like I was facing a formidable enemy. During this time, we had been chatting on and off, saying good morning and good night to each other every day. It had become a habit, but this was the first time she took the initiative to call me. I cleared my throat with a few coughs and sat up straight, pressing the answer button with determination. The sound of electricity was faint, magnified in the quiet night. She didn't speak for a while, and I couldn't help but be the first to break the silence. "Teacher Sue?" She finally spoke, her voice cold and deep, like feathers lightly brushing against my ear, inexplicably tickling. "I want to see you," she said. The next day, I purposely went to school with my parents. Shirley looked me up and down and said, "Brother, are you going on a blind date?" "Shirley, don't make me deal with you on this happy day." Our school, First Middle School, was a prestigious school, and the coming-of-age ceremony was held grandly. The boys and girls of 17 or 18 were full of vitality and youth. I took a few photos of Shirley, and then she disappeared. After a while, she secretly pulled me aside. "Brother, can you take a picture of us together?" Sammy was standing beside her. Maybe because there were still many people around, there was a small distance between the two kids, reserved and shy. I made an okay gesture. In the picture, the beautiful flower arch behind them was stunning. My memory had a moment of flashback. Actually, when Sue and I were in our senior year of high school, the school also held a coming-of-age ceremony, and it happened to be Sue's 18th birthday that day. "Brother?" After taking the picture, Shirley came to my side and asked, "What are you thinking about? You're so absorbed." I snapped out of it and clicked my tongue. "I was thinking, this little girl, you don't have much courage, taking a picture from so far away." Shirley coughed. "His parents are here too." "Oh." My parents also attended my coming-of-age ceremony back then, but it seemed that Sue's parents were busier and didn't come, giving me an opportunity. I took her to the rooftop. "Sue, I've prepared a birthday gift for you." Sue's beautiful black eyes looked over. She always seemed to be like this, devoid of much emotion, cold and indifferent. Even amidst the bustling excitement on the playground, with fireworks and flowers, even on her birthday. "Gift?" she asked softly. I restrained my racing heart and tiptoed to kiss her. That was my first time kissing her. Originally, I had intended to just give her a quick peck and run away, but on that day, Sue seemed different. She held onto my hand tightly, embraced me tightly, and kissed me back. It was youthful, yet restrained and passionate. Later, she asked me, "Will you accompany me on every birthday from now on, okay?" Dazed and dizzy, I replied, "Can I kiss you every time?" Then, okay. Honestly, at that time, I was only thinking about my own happiness. Now, looking back, I feel that those memories are unbearable. Sue had a hard time dealing with me, someone so infatuated with love during my first relationship. Just as I was silently feeling emotional, a familiar gentle male voice came from behind. "Teacher Sue, let's take a photo together too, shall we?" I turned around and saw that math teacher standing in front of Sue. They had just taken a group photo with students, so it seemed reasonable for them to make such a request. I tightened my grip on my phone. I had been busy the whole morning, and this woman didn't even pay much attention to me. Now she wants to take a photo with another man? What about what she said yesterday about wanting to see me? Sue seemed to sense something and looked up. The male teacher also glanced over and blinked, handing me the phone with a smile, asking, "Mr. Yee, could you please take a picture for us?" Before I could respond, Sue said, "No, thank you." The atmosphere froze for a moment. The male teacher clearly didn't expect Sue to reject him so directly, and on my behalf. He hesitated and said, "Then, should I ask Mr. Wang to help us take the picture?" "No need, it's not convenient," Sue said. The male teacher was puzzled. He awkwardly held up the phone in his hand. "What?" Sue looked at me steadily, her black eyes calm, but her words were directed at the male teacher. "I'm pursuing him, so it wouldn't be good to give him the wrong impression." "Gosh!" Lou exclaimed, dumbfounded. "Is this woman so straightforward and fierce?" I nodded frantically. It used to be me chasing after her, but now the tables have turned. How could I handle this? "No way, you have to stay strong." Lou paced in place, speaking with righteous determination. "Don't be swayed by a woman's beauty. You must continue to test her." I paused for a moment and nodded crazily again. They're busy with the senior year now, and for Shirley's college entrance exams, I have to hold on, at least until they finish their exams, right? Lou looked at me wordlessly. You pursued her for almost 3 years, and when she pursued you for 3 months, you compromised? I took out a photo I randomly took on my phone, showing Sue standing with students on the playground. She still shone brightly in the crowd. Lou hesitated for 3 seconds. All right, with a face and figure like that, you have to enjoy it while you're young. He suddenly leaned in, full of gossip. By the way, did you too? No, I sighed, raising my hands. It took 10 test papers just to hold hands. You can imagine how difficult my path was. Lou, I thought for a moment. After the exams, I'll find a time to talk to her properly. High school seemed so long. But those few months before the college entrance exams went by in a flash. In the blink of an eye, it was the hot summer of June. The college entrance exams. Sue was in charge of sending off the students, and as a parent, of course, I had to go too. Teacher Sue. Shirley said they're going out for dinner tonight. Are you going too? Sue shook her head. I'm not going, they'll be more relaxed without me. Oh, I coughed. Then, do you have any plans tonight? She looked at me. After a moment, she said, I do, I have something to say to you. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the final exam ended. The students poured out like a tide, countless faces filled with smiles or tears, bidding farewell to their youth. After giving Shirley a red envelope, I quickly left, of course, taking Sue with me. Ahem. At this time, it's quite difficult to get a good seat for dinner. While Sue went to park the car, I went ahead to the restaurant to get a number and queue up. Unexpectedly, I ran into Wendy. She glanced at me with surprise and said, Tim, you and Shirley got back together? I was about to say no, but she chuckled in relief and said, no wonder. I was a bit curious. No wonder what? No wonder she's been in such a good mood lately. I was wondering if it was because her students in her class had good test scores, but then I realized it must be something else. Now I know, it's because of you. Wendy sighed. Since her mother passed away, she hasn't been this relaxed. Have you not heard about it? It's been several years, hasn't it? She never told you? My heart felt like it was being tightly squeezed, making it difficult to breathe. I was taken aback. What? Her mother passed away? Wendy was also surprised. You didn't know? It's been a few years already. She never told you? My heart felt like it was being tightly squeezed, making it difficult to breathe. I struggled to speak. When did it happen? Wendy didn't expect that I genuinely didn't know and realized she slipped up. If Shirley didn't tell you, then, well, since you two are back together now, you'll find out sooner or later. She thought for a moment. I think it was in the second semester of our freshman year, maybe early May. Her mother took her own life, and she took a week off. When she came back, she had lost weight. She paused for a second. You must have broken up after that, so I thought you knew. Freshman year, early May. That's when I got injured. So, I didn't dare to continue thinking further. I suddenly realized that I didn't know what unfair things I had done to Sue. The parking lot was full, so I parked outside, which took a bit longer. Sue walked over and sat across from me. Her gaze fixed on my face, her voice softened. What's wrong? I lowered my head. Nothing, I just don't know what to order. She took the menu from me. The spicy chicken stir-fry is delicious here, and the spicy sautéed beef is also good. Out of the blue, I asked, have you tried them all? Sue hesitated. I've been here twice with my colleagues. I didn't say anything. Sue couldn't handle spicy food, not even in hot pot. She would usually only have mushroom soup or tomato soup. Sometimes, I liked to tease her by purposely kissing her after eating chili, making her blush and frantically drink milk. She would never order these dishes on her own during a colleague gathering. I ordered stir-fried vegetables and a pumpkin soup. After hesitating for a long time, I finally spoke up. By the way, you mentioned earlier that you wanted to talk to me about something? Sue seemed to be contemplating how to approach the subject. I don't know if you still want to hear it, but I feel like I owe you an explanation for what happened back then, she said quietly, as if sorting through the chaotic memories of the past. I am a child born out of wedlock. My heart skipped a beat, and I couldn't help but look up at her. Her expression was calm, as if she were talking about something unrelated to herself. After my mother became pregnant with me, he turned around and married a suitable woman. I only saw him once, at my mother's funeral. In that instant, I suddenly understood so many things, like why the seemingly perfect girl had always been cold and distant. Like why Sue's seat was always empty during parent-teacher meetings. Like why she looked taken aback when I mentioned giving her a birthday gift on our coming-of-age ceremony, and then stubbornly asked if I would be there for her every birthday. At that time, Sue's eyelashes fell, casting a shadow. I didn't dare to tell you all this. I have never liked someone so much. After waiting so long for him to like me back, I wondered if he would still like me if he knew all this. What should I do then? I clenched my hand tightly. After the college entrance exams, my mother went to see him once. When she came back, her condition worsened, and she needed a lot of medical expenses. Sue's voice was faint, talking about something that happened years ago, but it felt like a lifetime ago. I was desperate at that time. I wanted to do as many assignments as possible for my tutor, take on as many part-time jobs as possible. I was afraid I couldn't protect my mother or be worthy of you. But in the end, she still left me behind. My palm throbbed with pain, and I finally managed to ask, "When did it happen?" Sue remained silent for a long time. I was struggling to hold back, but my voice still trembled. "So, on that day, when I messaged you and you didn't reply, when I called you and you didn't pick up, that day, I mentioned breaking up with you, didn't I?" Sue still didn't speak. I remembered something else. "You came to find me afterwards, didn't you?" Sue twirled her cup, and after a long while, she finally nodded. "Yes. After I sorted out those things, I wanted to come back and explain everything to you, but I saw you walking with another girl." I asked softly, "Why didn't you question me? You knew how much I liked you, Sue. If you had just spoken up." "I didn't want to be that selfish," Sue said. "I always wanted to confirm over and over again if you really liked me, to make you prove it again and again. But that day, I suddenly realized that someone like me didn't deserve someone like you. You're so good, there's no one better than you, so you should be liked by everyone, a star among the crowd. Instead of always being by my side, struggling like this." My throat felt dry. "That's not true, Sue. It's not true. I like you, and I've never felt that being with you is difficult. You can't judge me like this, it's unfair to me." Emotions overwhelmed me, and I closed my eyes. "You can't do this. You made me leave the person I loved the most without even knowing it." I dared not imagine Sue's reaction when she saw that breakup message. I had promised her that I would be there for every birthday. I didn't fulfill that promise. In that moment, I didn't know who to blame for all of this. Sue's eyes flickered with a hint of panic. "Timmy." She hesitated, usually so confident and composed. I took a deep breath, looking at her intently. "So, why were you willing to keep it a secret and stay apart from me for so many years, but now you're willing to talk about it?" Sue pursed her lips. After a moment, she said, "I tried to forget the past, tried not to love you, but I couldn't do it. When you weren't around, my love for you grew uncontrollably." "Timmy, do you still want Sue? And then what? When is the wedding date set?" Lou exclaimed excitedly, pointing at himself. "Can I choose my groomsman outfit first?" My parents were overjoyed, but my sister's expression was complicated. "Want me to go through the college entrance exams with you and find you a wife?" I thought about it seriously. "You don't have to worry about us breaking up before the exams. After all, we're getting married right after the exams. Think about it, who wouldn't say how great their older brother is?" My sister said, "Fine. Have you finalized the list of high school classmates?" I leaned closer to Sue. When those people received their invitations, they were all shocked. It made sense though. Last time we were like strangers in class, but now, all of a sudden, we were getting married. No wonder they reacted so strongly. "It's almost done." Sue handed me the list. I pointed at it and asked, "What about Chris?" Sue raised an eyebrow. "I thought you didn't like him." "Well, I don't like him, that's why I have to invite him." "Didn't he ask you for your WeChat last time?" "I have to exercise my sovereignty." Sue nodded in agreement. "Okay." As she leaned in, I was confused. "Sue, what are you doing?" Sue's hand landed on my waist. "Didn't you say we have to exercise our sovereignty?" "I'll do it, however you want." She suddenly stopped, and I looked over to see her gazing at the scar on my left knee. I felt a bit embarrassed. "They're just minor injuries." She kissed me, her breath warm. I trembled for a moment, unable to say the rest of my words. Finally, in a brief pause between breaths, I whispered in her ear, "Sue, I really like you." She held me tighter. "I feel the same. Thank you for being willing to like Sue." Sue extra. I've known since I was little that I was an unnecessary existence. I've never met my father, and my mom says I look just like him, so sometimes she treats me well, but most of the time she looks at me with resentment and disgust. No one knows about this, no one from the parents' meeting bothers to show up for me, but luckily my grades are good enough that teachers can easily overlook it with any excuse. On the first day of high school, my mom fell ill again and broke things at home. By the time I arrived at school, I was already late, but I didn't care. "Hey, classmate!" a boy called out to me from behind. I turned around, and he froze for a moment, his face turning red instantly. I've seen this kind of reaction many times before, but what he said next caught me off guard. "You're going to be late." He urgently pointed to the right. "I'll go distract them, and you can sneak in from here." He seemed a little different from the others. Later, I found out that he was not just a little different from others. He was unique. I knew he had been putting breakfast on my desk for a week because whenever I drank it, he would eagerly look in this direction. He was looking at the breakfast. I knew the love letter in the physics book was written by him because he stuffed it in front of the whole class during self-study when I was away for a competition. I knew he deliberately punctured the tire of his bicycle because he spent so much effort on it, and I waited outside the bike shed for several minutes because of that. I can't be with him. If I agreed directly, would he fall in love quickly and fall out of love quickly too? When he confessed for the first time, I was so close to nodding. In the end, I mustered all my strength to restrain myself and didn't say a word. Later, he complained about it many times. He didn't know that I couldn't speak, because if I did, I would definitely accept. I know he chose the science stream for me, but with his grades, we would have to separate after the college entrance exams. But he wants to be with me. He said he was meant to be mine, and I was his. I've never had a birthday before, and he gave me my first birthday present. I loved it. There's nothing I've loved more in these years. I'm busy, I'm tired. But I don't want to tell him. He has always been innocent and happy. He shouldn't be sad because of someone like me. When I received his message in the hospital, I thought, maybe I was wrong. It's not that he can't live without me, it's that I can't live without him. The years without him passed by quickly. I returned to the city where he is, and I know he has started working. I've tried all the Szechuan restaurants in the city. When the spiciness stings my throat, I have only one thought in my mind: will he like it? I thought I was doing well. I thought I could continue like this, till the day I saw him again. Just like in high school, pure, cheerful, incredibly handsome. I think maybe I'm just a very selfish person. I want to give it a try. Sue has nothing. Sue only loves Tim,